Rising. We have a great Friday show for you today. I'm Jason Nichols. I'm joined at the desk today by the Washington Spectator's Amber Athey. Did I get it right? Athey?
You did.
All right. Glad that I didn't say Athey. Amber, great to be with you this morning. And it's great to be with all of you. Filling in for Robbie and Bree today. We tied them up. We put them in the basement. And we are here today for you. I know you love it. Amber, what's going on?
Hey, we've got lots to get into. Up first, President Biden is expected to announce his reelection campaign next week. According to new reporting from the Washington Post, the president and his team are eyeing this upcoming Tuesday, the 4-year anniversary of Biden's 2020 campaign launch, as the big day.
Meanwhile, on the other side of the aisle, new Wall Street Journal polling released today finds former President Donald Trump tops the GOP primary field, even as he faces prosecution in New York. Support for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who previously enjoyed a narrow lead over Trump in the Journal's December poll, dropped 14 points amongst likely GOP primary voters. He now trails 13 points behind the former president. So what do you make of this? You know, you're the resident conservative. What do you make of this?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, at first it seemed like Floridians in particular were really disturbed by President Trump's attacks on Florida Governor Ron DeSantis when he went after him ahead of the midterm elections and after his campaign announcement and tried to flip the script on COVID. But since then, it doesn't seem like DeSantis has gained any momentum whatsoever, and maybe his strategy of kind of sitting back and not responding to Trump has not served him very well.
Yeah, I think you have to be a fighter. People are looking for a fighter, and Donald Trump, one of the things that he does really well, even with his issues on COVID and the vaccines and all of that, even when he was criticized by his own base, he stands up to them. He's like, I'm the boss here. And I think people like that. People embrace that. Ron DeSantis comes across as, like I've said this several times, he comes across small. He's not the biggest guy in the room. You don't look at Ron DeSantis and say, he's our leader. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of Florida Republicans, Rutherford, Greg Stubbe, Byron Donalds. Yeah. Byron Donalds. Mast, all these guys who are Florida Republicans, and they were the DeSantis camp was trying to keep them from endorsing Trump, and they've gone with Trump, and I think it's because Trump has that CEO feel, and he's an entertainer, and that's something that you can't, that's in your spinal cord.
Yeah, you can't teach that. Trump is actually very funny, and DeSantis, I don't think, has that same charisma. He's obviously very intelligent. He's very tapped into his policy decisions. He keeps a very small circle, which is one of the things I always criticized Trump for, was he was horrible at picking personnel and surrounding himself with the right people. But the things that I'm hearing from conservatives is that when they watch DeSantis try to work like a handshake line, it's just awkward. He doesn't relate to people very well. He's naturally an introvert. And Trump is the exact opposite. Exactly. He's really good at connecting with people one-on-one.
Yeah, no, and all of our presidents in recent memory, you go back to George W. Bush, he was not a good speaker. But one of the things anybody I know who's met George W. Bush says, you connect with the guy one-on-one. Barack Obama is a generational kind of talent in politics. And then even Joe Biden, even with his, sniffing the hair and all of that kind of stuff, you shake his hand and he connects with people. And I think that, DeSantis just doesn't have it, whatever it is. And I think a lot of Republicans are starting to realize that he's not the guy. And I think maybe he'll have a chance in 2028. That's a possibility. He could be a strong candidate, especially if he's going up against someone like Kamala Harris. I think
that's true.
These are two people who just are not necessarily good interviewers. We saw DeSantis flub the whole Ukraine issue, which I think a lot of Republicans saw him as kind of waffling and going on both sides of the fence. So he's kind of, he seems like he's just kind of looking for a lane. He doesn't know where to go. He doesn't want to offend people. And that's the exact opposite of Donald Trump, who projects strength. I think against the Kamala Harris, he could do well. But I'm not convinced Kamala Harris is going to be the nominee in 2028, whether Joe Biden wins or loses.
Right.
So I think he's got a chance down the road. But as you stated, there's certain things you can't teach in politics, and I don't think Ron DeSantis has it. He was lucky to win that Florida race
the first time.
The first time against Andrew Gillum. Andrew Gillum, I think, for all his issues, is an incredibly talented politician, and he was lucky to win that race because we started to see some of those scandals start to bubble to the surface. DeSantis is not one of those talented guys, and he's latched on to the right culture war policies that were popular with Republicans, but they're starting to actually see him, and Trump is the man right now.
The other thing that I'm hearing is that in regards to a potential DeSantis campaign is that because of how much of a micromanager he is and how involved he is in every single decision, it's really hard to grow that type of operation on a national level. I mean, what is he going to be doing? Hopping into, every campaign briefing call and asking about exactly how many doors are being knocked in, this precinct in Iowa? Like, it's just not feasible to run a national campaign that way. You have to be willing to offload responsibility to other people. So something that works really well in the governor's office might not work so well when you're trying to run for president. But I wanted to ask you about Biden's ambitions, because he's set to announce his reelection campaign. And as bad as I think Biden is, and as low as his polling is, I don't see any other Democrat that could take the reins right now.
No, I think Biden, number one, he's an incumbent, and I think it would be a big mistake for anybody to go against an incumbent president, because it makes it seem like your base doesn't have it figured out. You picked the wrong guy. So I've been saying, I know a lot of people and their problems within, mainstream Democratic politics. Their problem with Biden isn't really his policies. It's his age. Mm-hmm. That's the big issue. So we look at what Biden has done, and I know that conservatives and many other people are upset with Biden for many things, but when you look at what he's done, he said he was going to be this uniter, right? But we've seen some bipartisan legislation under Biden. So they may not like him, but we got bipartisan infrastructure. We got the Respect for Marriage Act. We got the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which, we got the first major gun legislation in 30 years that was broadly popular. I think that Joe Biden actually has a lot to run on. He's been hampered by inflation and by some of the things in the financial sector. But when you look at even his base, which is people like African-American voters, who are upset, I think, about the lack of action on voting rights and a few other things, he still can tout some of the economic gains that have happened. In the fourth quarter of 2022, we saw that African Americans gained the most in terms of wage increases. So I think he has stuff to run on. We're going to see, how this all works out, and we'll be back with more Rising after this.